G'day and welcome to Inforunners. I'm Execute. Today we're joined by Staring Badgers, Absent Essay, and Commander. How do you say your name? CC1004 or just Commander? I'm going to refer to you as Commander. It rolls off the tongue easier.
You do you, Holmes.
Yeah.
Have fun with it.
So we're going to be doing a professional point of view on intelligence gathering. This is a very meaty subject, and I will say straight off the bat, it hits everything in the game. In some way or another, and you'll kind of see that as we go through it. I've probably never been more confused doing a professional point of view, but that's just how it is. But I think we've kind of broken it down into three pieces, which is collection, analysis, and use, and we're going to basically go through that. And each of these guys tend to be more tailored to one of those than the other, and that's why we've got three people on. Yeah, I guess we'll do you just want to start a collection, so we'll go from there. And so I would say, who's the most collecty? Would that be USA?
yeah,
collecty?
Probably out of the group. Yeah, I'm very collecty.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I've got these notes. That's why I'm looking off to the left, because this thing is all notes, right? And the first thing is asking the question. So tell me, what is asking the question essay when it comes to collection?
If you were to collect intelligence on everything, you would never find out anything, because there's so much information in the world that there needs to be a starting point. And that starting point tends to be either a senior commander in the military, is what I'm used to, or in the civilian world, it would be an executive or someone head of a division asks a question. I need an answer to this, and I need you as a collective subordinate group to help me find that answer.
Okay, so basically he comes to you and say, I need to find out how many ships they have at this starport in Stanton. And you would
it may not even...
As an example.
It may not even... Yeah, it may not even be that specific. It just may be, I need to know the asset capabilities of X organization or X military or whatever in the Stanton system. And that's it's a simple question, but it's a very large answer that requires a lot of different resources to be able to give a full answer to.
Yeah. So then we've got the different types of collection methods. So the first one here is signal intelligence. So do you want to explain that a bit? So what is signal intelligence?
Well, signal is basically anything that you can grab out of the ether electronically. And I use that as a general term. I know that's a little more complicated than that. We're talking about spectrums, radio, but at this point now it can mean email, it can mean cell phone text messages, it can mean Instagram, or sorry, that would be open source, but like WhatsApp or anything that potentially would be encrypted. You're grabbing something out of the ether that is not intended for you to hear.
So it's stuff you're intercepting.
Yes.
Yep. All right. The next one we've got here is human intelligence. So that's obviously getting stuff from whether interrogating or just talking to people, anything that you get from a human source.
So human intelligence also is called human, and the goal of it is to get originally information and then vet it into intelligence from either cooperative sources. So let's say you have a friend in another org, or you have an NPC that you have a relationship with in the game that likes you through reputation. They're giving you information willingly or through sources that are unknowingly or resisting giving you information. So that could be something like an interrogation, something like just simply having a conversation with an NPC that may have information, or another player. It's a pretty broad spectrum of collection, but it means that it's coming from either an individual, but in the case of Star Citizen and its complex AI, it may actually come from an NPC.
Yeah, that makes sense. Really off-the-cuff question: does it ever been intel that comes from animals or something like that? I'm just kind of curious. Like, now you bring up the human thing.
Information, yes.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example that I've seen. So you go into a village, you look at their animals seem malnourished or diseased. You might even have a veterinarian with you, and they'll see that and they'll be able to assess and come back and then make an offer at a later date to potentially help that village to say, hey, we'd love to come in with a veterinarian to help you improve the quality of your livestock and their lives. And you could even teach them how to do that. And that builds good rapport with that village and opens up potential other avenues of human intelligence or I don't want to call it human intelligence because really it's information gathering at that point. That's just the general term.
Yep.
But you get other sources of information because you build goodwill with individuals.
All right. So then go ahead, Regis.
There's also examples of things like of displacement of people who normally care for animals. So you imagine a farm can be quite advantageous to the military. Lots of large buildings that have huge amounts of interior space that can access open areas very quickly. You can have things like surface-to-air missile sites deployed at a location. Now, typically, they will displace the farmers. So if you're noticing over a period of time that farmland appears to be neglected, all of a sudden, maybe you've got livestock that's dying because it's not being fed, or, maybe the soldiers fancied a barbecue that night. That's a pretty big indicator that something's changed.
Yeah. So that's yeah. Okay. So the next one I've got here is open source intelligence. Yeah. So this is similar to the signal intelligence, but it's more passive. I'm assuming. Is that what you would call it, SA? More. So it seems like
it's more.
Go ahead.
It's more active actually because you have to monitor those channels. So you might, in a war zone or in even just a permissive environment or non-permissive environment, which means the locals are fine with you being there or they're not. You would likely have every news station on, every radio station on. You'd be monitoring the local political person's Facebook, Instagram, whatever it would be, because they're going to be putting out messaging that may inform you of at least their mindset or their desired goals. If you are crushing them in one place and they're saying we're doing fine, then you know that, or at least you have some information leading you to believe that they may not want you or their local populace to know they're losing in that area. That isn't intelligence yet, but it's valuable information for the mindset or for your analysts to consider when they're looking at other types of information that they need to analyze into intelligence.
Okay. The last one we've got here is passive intelligence. So I'll let you explain that one too.
Yeah, I feel like I've kind of run the table on this one. I was hoping Commander would jump in.
I'm going to let Commander do the next one. But yeah.
That's right. Yeah, that's his bread and butter.
Yeah.
So passive intelligence is some of the most valuable and also some of the least valuable. It is the information that basically falls in your face. The best example I've seen of that is for example, the cow example. You happen to go in a village, it's not your mission, but it's in front of your face. You see it, you make a note. You see a kid with a weapon, a young child, you make a note. Okay, this is something that I'm collecting. It may not even be pertinent to the mission, but you're taking a mental note because it's something that you don't recognize as being familiar for that area. So it's a change in the environment, or it's just something that it's not instinct, but I think you know what I'm saying. Like it just doesn't seem right to you. And there are other things too, like you could see a poster on the wall for recruiting for another military. You could see all kinds of different things, and you're collecting that information. The reason why it's passive is because you're not looking for it; it's coming to you in a way.
Yeah.
So that would be the example I'd give. The worst example I've seen of passive information is someone commenting on the number of bicycles people were riding and the quality of those bicycles. That was fantastic. It's totally worth a report.
I want to ride my motorcycle. And then we move on to analysis. So that was the first part of actually collecting it, and there's obviously a lot to sift through. So that's where this analysis comes in, hey Commander. So
we're at the fun stuff.
Yeah, so the first one we've got here is linking the intel. So do you want to explain that to us?
Right. Your collectors, their job is to just collect. They don't know what this information's used for. And they don't know if it's good. Your job is to go through all of these reports and corroborate information, find what's dated, what is a one-off, what is relevant to your area, and build a factual picture based off of legitimate reporting.
Is this the part in the movie where the guy recalls that really obscure thing, and that's what cracks the whole thing open in those intelligence movies? Because that's what I'm thinking of right now. But yeah,
It could be. I got
like all those motorcycles, the bicycles that cracked it wide open. Yeah.
It's sometimes really weird things. Like I was trying to work one network and you had a dead end, and then I go back about 8 months and I get a phone number with a fake name, and it blew the case wide open. I was able to put everything together.
Oh wow, interesting. So okay, I got questions now, but I'll leave that to afterwards. But yeah, because I'm like, what was the fake name, and did it link to something else? And I'm assuming it's somehow all linked up, so the fake name was relevant somewhere else. I'm assuming. So yeah. So fact checking and collaborating is the next one we've got there. So if you want to explain that one,
right? There's a way to lie with every way you collect. Your enemy is gonna know how to lie about it, how to spoof it. And it's your job to figure out what's the lie, what's the truth. And sometimes you have to make that leap. So it's really important when you're trying to corroborate facts is to have multiple disciplines of intelligence. So you have a report comes from an interrogation, and then you get a phone number and he might say he lives in this area. Well, next thing you want to do is ask your SIGINT guys to what they have on this phone number, and are we pinging that number in the same general area of this report? And if you're not, someone's wrong somewhere, and then you have to go back to your human guy, get him to give you more information. Maybe his number's wrong, or you have to go to the SIGINT guy and he's actually tracking a virtual number, and they have to correlate to another number to get your dude you're looking for.
That's pushing it. It's pushing it up or down. So you might push information up, but it might not be enough for a picture. So you get information requests where someone is saying, I need a little more of this picture. Either keep an eye out for these things, and you don't know. If you're the collector, you don't know why they want to know that. And honestly, you don't ask. It's your job. You have a mission and you have a set of information requirements, and that's what you push up when you get that information.
It's also our job at this point to go back to the collectors and tell them if their source is good or if they need to drop it because they're getting false information.
So that was something that you just hit on there too that we probably should have talked about earlier was the compartmentalization of all this. So it's deliberately designed in such a way that it stops people being compromised. So that's why a lot of the gatherers don't know what they do. Would you say that's correct? I'll throw that one to SA. So yeah.
I mean, it's correct in a way. I wouldn't say we're blind, and I don't think we're doing things that don't meet the commander's intent, because we do have a larger picture. We know what the mission set is, but there's something really common in the field, which is overreach or projection, where the person, I wouldn't call myself a collector. I'm not a collector. I do things, I have a mission, I go on the mission, but I have an opportunity to bring back information that may have value. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it. But that being said, if I project my own values onto something or what I think is valuable, I'm going to come back with a report on how broken the sidewalks are in an area that just got bombed. So, because to me, that's value.
What about you, Badges? How do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, from the user end, you'll find that, when we had our intelligence reports, when we were in the Gulf and we were doing anti-piracy ops off of Somalia, all of that gets stripped out. So you don't see where any of it has come from, other than the obvious. When you get satellite images, or high-level photography, it's fairly clear where that stuff has come from. But one of the things that's so useful, where both SA and Commander have made reference to this, is when you ask for that information, not knowing why it's being asked for is almost more. It's actually a really powerful thing. You think, well, but then people can tailor it. But the danger with that is you get confirmation bias, and people start making their own judgments as to what is or isn't valid to the task. So we're, exactly as Commander says, the job is to paint the picture. It's our job then to go looking for the details at that end, because there might be something that everyone else deems really, really obscure at that level that to us on the ground could be a very early indicator that something has changed. And that there's a more serious situation brewing in the background. Because that's, at the end, that's the job of intelligence, is give us the tools to do whatever it is we're trying to achieve. it's key now. This is military warfare is changing. It is no longer World War II, bludgeon your enemy until they give up. This is, and we've kind of talked about things, or we've all talked about things like center of gravity, and it's about neutralizing your enemy in the fewest steps possible. Minimize casualties, minimize expenditure, and minimize the risk to your own organization, because of course they're trying to do exactly the same to you. So the side that achieves that in the fewest steps almost always wins. But it's all got to be separate. Where you need to know, you find out. But on the business end, I don't need to know where the information comes from. I need to understand that it's gone through rigorous checks, that it is as reliable as we can understand it to be at the time. And kind of that's it really for us.
Lastly, as the middleman, how do you find that commander?
He's ace on everything.
Yeah. So they've just squeezed you out of the combat. That's fine. All right, we'll move on to the last one. The second last one actually. Pattern of life. So, what is pattern of life, and why is it important in analysis?
Right. Pattern of life is going back over a significant amount of time, usually months, and it's seeing the routines that people take. If you take one report saying a guy has a meeting in this compound, and that's a one-off. If you say we need to put a warhead there, you could kill a bunch of civilians and not get your target. So if you can prove over several months that he's frequently visiting this house and he's with these people, now we have a consistent location, and we're pretty sure that when we action it, we're going to get the right guy. And that also helps telling you the tools that people are using, the radio frequencies and all that fun stuff. You just don't want to go down a rabbit hole for what's a one-off case. Yeah. And then go to your action and you get nothing.
So basically, in layman's terms, it's humans are creatures of habits and they have routines. And it's kind of like checking their routines and seeing if anything changes, if anything doesn't change and things like that. Okay. Mm-hmm. The last one we have here that Badge just gave away was center of gravity. So I'll let you explain that last one. Well, second last one.
Okay. This is the hardest part of being an analyst.
Yep.
Because this is the one time that you're really put on a spotlight as an analyst. You can't change reporting. If there's no reporting in area, there's no reporting. If there's a lot of it, there's a lot of it, and it's always going to be what those reports says. When you come to center of gravity, you're taking all that information, you're building a network, and you're looking for that piece on the chessboard, their king piece, and you're saying if we remove it, they no longer can function for a very long time. Yes. You're identifying weaknesses, pieces that if we take those out, they're going to be severely degraded in their capabilities. You're looking at their strengths, saying that these people or these items make them function. And this is also the one time being an analyst where you're put up against the wall where people say that you are an idiot. You most of the times it's sitting in a room with 40 other people and they're all trying to say that you're wrong. And you have to fight.
That's like when we do. That's like when we do. That's like when we do speculation here as in Inforunners. Like you're in a group and you're trying to speculate and find out stuff. So I get that part, and I think the other part I kind of get is you like what Badger said earlier. You are trying to find the quickest way to take out the enemy, so to speak, in the shortest number of steps.
Well,
make them ineffective.
The ineffective part is important because it may not be taking them out. It may be rounding up the right person at the right time. It may not be a kinetic operation. It can actually be an information operation. It can be a variety of things, but the center of gravity is always going to be that, from my perspective, it would be, and this is more from an information side, not from an intelligence side. So if I'm going into a village, they may have a mayor, they may have a religious leader, they may have a business person that are the heads of that society. I can almost guarantee you that one of them is more influential than the others. So who is really driving the efforts? Who's shutting you down from access? Who's telling people not to talk to you? Who you've never heard of that's just the money broker behind the scenes. It's that's going to be the efforts you want to do for non-kinetic operations. You want to try to break that down and get access, because access, I'd rather be friends with you in a semi-hostile environment than have to worry about you shooting me.
It's also important to note that your center of gravity is not always a person. If you're looking at a network and the highest guy is just a lieutenant, right? He's going to be replaced within a week. But if they're a supply network, it could be the train that they're shipping all their supplies on. It could also be as intangible as your network needs political legitimacy to function. You know, that could be your cog. If you can convince the people that they're not the right government, they don't exist.
So a linchpin, if you will.
Yes.
Yeah. You could literally turn off a tap, and you turn off that tap, and it has a cascading effect, so to speak. But yeah, I get you. Last one we've got here, which kind of brings that full loop, because the very first one in collecting was asking the question. So the last one in analysis is answering the question. So yeah, tell me about that one.
Right. So by the time you're answering the question, your commander doesn't know his network. He expects you to be that subject matter expert. So you're going to go to him. You're going to tell him, this is what we find. These are the key people. This is their end state. This is the factors that they need requirements they need to function. These are the weaknesses that are easily exploitable. And at that point, you might give a recommendation on what actions to take to break up this network. Now, if it's a person's your cog, and he's the only one who can get money in, you might say, put a warhead on his forehead. Or you might say, delegitimize them in a propaganda campaign.
Yeah.
We don't do propaganda.
Quote unquote.
Yeah. All right. And then we move on to Badger's area of expertise, which is use. He's a user. That's what he is. He's a user, confirmed. So the first one actually comes from
You always paint me in the best possible light.
I know, man.
Really
Hey, dude, you were the one doing this earlier. I saw that bottle. Like, you just chugged. Anyway, yeah. So the first one actually comes from the analysts, and that's the recommendation from the analysts. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I mean, there's going to be two prongs to this. So you have the intelligence that is driving a specific mission, and then you have the intelligence that is informing what is a commitment. So I did a lot of the latter. The RN, NATO, various alliances have a standard presence in a lot of places. And I've done standing maritime groups in the Mediterranean, in the Gulf, anti-piracy ops, all that sort of stuff. So you have the intelligence that is continuing to feed those sorts of things, and it's already a very well-established intelligence picture. We've got a really good idea of what's going on, and what we're monitoring for now are kind of changes in the landscape and watching things change. You then have the stuff that is kind of a lot more immediate, and that is intelligence driving a specific task, right? So a commander needs to achieve a specific effect. And that's what the question will be. It's like, how do I approach this particular aspect?
So,
and it's like a backward and forward. It's hard to say where one ends and the other begins, because the commander's not just going to go out of thin air. Oh, well, I think their center of gravity is this. Now show me the picture on that. Similarly, it's a bit of a luxury to have your mission tailored completely to the intelligence, because often there's another operational imperative and you're trying to maybe achieve a couple of things at once.
Right. Okay.
So the recommendations, sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
So the recommendations that I would be used to dealing with, certainly in terms of the around kind of counter-piracy Yemen, Somalia, for example, in that corridor. We were looking very much at where are they getting the boats? Are we dealing with professional, a professional force of some description or another? Are these people who are professional military? Are they just farmers who are desperate, or fishermen who are desperately trying to survive, and this is the only way of making their cash? So trying to understand who is it we're dealing with? What is the risk associated with the people that we're dealing with? Where are they getting their vessels from? Are they out of one particular location? And so on and so forth. And what we found out in a roundabout way, and I'm sure this is no surprise to absolutely anyone, was yes, they were pretty well motivated. The training, not so much, but they were very well motivated. They weren't locals. They were parts of gangs or working under a warlord. And the vessels themselves were just stolen from local fishermen. So as part of the response, what you can see from that, the recommendation is destroying the boats doesn't work because all they'll do is steal more.
Yeah.
And you will see, the videos on YouTube. I'm sure people, if they've got kind of a bit of a military interest, will have seen videos on YouTube of people blowing up boats and, screaming and shouting and cheering about it. And it's like, that was just some poor fisherman's skiff that they nicked. Yeah. It's not achieving anything. It's not like blowing up main battle tanks or shooting down, aircraft.
So I was going to say, you can now clearly, because the next one here is desired end state, so that you can clearly see where the recommendation rolls straight into that. So give us an example of that, please.
Yeah, so something like that would be the desired end state for Somalia would be to neutralize those people ashore, because that's the only way you could really hit any of their infrastructure. Obviously, that wasn't going to happen. We learned very heavily. And we continue to learn that boots on the ground isn't always the best option. So you've just kind of limit their ability. And then we had to go after that in other ways. So it turned out that the core of that, actually, it's a lot of organized crime. And the Somalis are just a means to an end. So attacking the organized crime angle is the best way of calming that situation down. And going after them financially, infrastructure in other countries, tracking the key individuals down became the best way to do that. But, I think the key thing there, I keep going back to pattern of life. That really, and kind of fed into us being able to identify when things were going wrong.
Yep.
So, for example, parts of the world have a different day than Sunday where people chill out.
Yeah.
So, it could be that Sundays are normally busy and all of a sudden this particular Sunday is quiet and there aren't as many fishing dhows coming out to do what they would normally do. That to us is a, what do they know that we don't sort of moment. It's like, normally this place would be abuzz with fishing vessels. Why not now? And it's almost like the cliched, Tom Clancy, the convoy driving through the middle of Mexico or wherever, and everyone's shutting up all the shutters, and they're getting off the street, and the lady comes out, grabs a kid, and runs back inside with them, and they're all going, we don't like this, and everyone's getting their guns ready and all that. It is very much that sort of. It's very dumbed down, but that in effect is what you.
It's actually. That's a real thing, so it's kind of funny. With the movies, obviously the movies are a little dramatic, but yeah, when you turn a corner and all of a sudden what used to be a busy street's not busy, you rethink whether or not you're going down that street.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this next one we kind of left open because obviously it depends on what your kind of question is and your answer and what you're actually trying to do with it. So we've just written this down as who, what, where, when, why, and how. So obviously that kind of, you explain it. I'll let you explain it, Badges. So
yeah. So again, another kind of environment I could liken this to is the work that I did early on in my career in Northern Ireland. And that was very much reacting with the intelligence communities up there. And the idea was to, the desired end state, if you'd like, was to prevent further paramilitary action in Northern Ireland by limiting the financial abilities of paramilitary groups, and seriously putting a kink in what they were able to, the funds they were able to get. And a lot of this revolved on activities at sea, be it illicit goods being traded from Northern Ireland into Great Britain proper or vice versa. So it kind of drove everything. Where are we going? What areas are we targeting? What do we look for? How are they moving things? And it was a very interesting shift that we saw from normal vehicles to refrigerated vehicles. Because the way refrigerated vehicles work and food goods and that in the UK, they, in their own intelligence, figured out that we had to be very careful, and there were a lot of rules to follow, and massive financial penalties opening the back of refrigerated goods trucks, because you can spoil the entire load. And you imagine you've got an articulated lorry full of prime meat cuts. That's a huge amount of money that we would become liable for, because we've just written it off trying to search for weapons, drugs,
So they
fuel, whatever it is.
Yeah, interesting. That's very interesting.
Yeah. So that's, it drove all of our actions. What was clear at that point was military intervention wasn't, with the paramilitary groups, in terms of kinetic action, in terms of violence, wasn't justified, because we weren't in a period of extreme violence. We were trying to prevent it from going back to that. So obviously, if intelligence identified something that would be an imminent violent act by a paramilitary group, that's when you could potentially see the local police forces, or in an extreme case, maybe special forces deployed. And throughout the Northern Ireland conflict, there are multiple instances of special forces being deployed to counter specific threats. Those threats are all identified through intelligence.
The last one we have here, which you've kind of gone over a little bit, is Debrief. So yeah, last but not least. So yeah, tell us about that
Commander might have a...
All right.
What sort of things do you see on your end, Commander, what debriefs, what feedback do you get, if any?
The first thing is, was this mission successful? Was our information good enough to roll up our target? And then the next question is, did it degrade the network significantly enough that they're no longer operational? That's usually happens. Another thing that defines a good analyst from a great analyst is, a great analyst is going to be predicting the second and third order effects. If you put out your cog is a gatekeeper in intel for whatever network you're looking at.
Can you just update them on cog for the average viewer?
Center of gravity. My bad.
All good.
Yeah. But if he's a gatekeeper, like, all information goes through him, right? And you remove him from the scene in whatever method you want. But he talked on his phone a lot. Your second order effect is, you're no longer collecting as good intel anymore. That guy probably is going to get replaced in weeks to a couple months at longest. And that network might no longer be talking on cell phones anymore. It might be a lot harder to signal collect. And the longer you're going up against the network, the smarter and smarter your opposition is. And the dumb leaders are going to die very soon.
So is that a suggestion?
Or you keep them alive.
Yeah. And this is the point.
You might go, just keep collecting on him. He's more valuable alive.
So from a gameplay perspective, people who are sat there going, well, how are you going to link this back to the game? One of the things they could bear in mind from this is, maybe if you've got a really good source of intelligence on the other side, don't make them the target, however easy that would be, because they are a great source of intelligence. And unless you've got your next source of intelligence lined up and you're getting stuff out of them and you're kind of expanding into all of their spaces, maybe don't kill the one good source of information that you have.
Just the desire. Yeah, that's what you're going to want to do. And that's really... I mean, I've put together, with a team, obviously, but I put together missions, execute those missions, come in and done the debriefs. We do internal, then you do with your debriefers, then do a hot wash and what, did we do what we wanted to do? How are we tactically sound? And every so often, you'll go put in a mission set, and you think you know the guy, you know what you need to do. It could be a non-kinetic mission. It could just go be a meet and greet. And you'll get a phone call, over a secured line saying, no. Like, cease this line of effort immediately.
Yeah.
And it won't even necessarily be the military. It could be the State Department or someone else that's basically, or you may have, and you may be working with another agency, another government agency that would say, just look, man, we have this, pump your brakes, go do something else. And if you have good relationships, it's not a bad thing. You're like, oh, cool. I know that guy. I have a good relationship with that guy. Cool. Hands off. I'm walking away. What I see as far as gameplay in Star Citizen with orgs, to be honest, let's be really direct. Information is going to be widely known in an org. There's only going to be a select group of people that keep secrets.
And to that end, to that end, I was going to say, yeah, now we're going to apply all this to the game. That was my next thing, but Bad just jumped it. You jumped it. That's all fine. So I think with the whole thing is you can quite honestly see how this touches everything in the game and how something that just doesn't seem relevant at one time could actually be quite relevant. So I'm probably going to ask each of you to do an example. And if you want, you can do one that's obscure, one that's generalized, whatever. So you have a think, and but some of the ones that we wrote down here, we started writing down the ones that was going to hit, and we got like hacking, data running, quanta, and actually understanding how quanta works, e-warfare, bounty hunting, command and control, and then I just pretty much went pretty much everything. That's literally how it went. Because it really can touch everything in the game.
And the thing is, a lot of the times, normally I would pop in at this point and say, we're not saying that this is going to be part of the game. We're merely speculating. But I mean, this is in EVE, right? And if anyone remembers, there was an amazing story that came out of EVE about the Guiding Hand Social Club. And they were a group. They are an organization with EVE who are not an org. They are a group of friends who are all organized outside of EVE.
Yep.
The Guiding Hand Social Club is not an entity within EVE apart from them sharing their assets and everything else. Yep. And effectively, they went in on this huge operation against one mega corporation or organization. And they did so much damage that I think someone looked at it and went, if you were going to go and buy the in-game currency to get all this stuff back, you'd be looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of in-game currency. That's how much damage they did to this one corporation. So EVE is just rife with people trying to find out. There's been people joining orgs or corporations within EVE for years as part of the corporation. They are in there just leeching all the information they can and sending it back to the other corp.
So to put that into clarification for Star Citizen terms, and it works in EVE as well, is that collecting is in-game, the analysis completely out of game, and then the use is back in the game again. So I know Commander mentioned before the show, Discord would be used quite extensively in the analysis and stuff like that. So a lot of things would be more out of game. And like you mentioned, there were people in EVE that never actually played the game. They just did the complete analysis thing. And I know SA even brought up at one point that there'll probably be people that make real world money doing that for games like Star Citizen and EVE. So yeah, it's kind of interesting from that regard. It's the game out of the game, if you know what I mean. But yeah.
There you go, Commander. It'll be your first calling, mate. You'll be the world's first fully paid games intelligence analyst.
That'd be awesome, actually. So yeah, I'll call on you first then, Commander. Do you want to give us an example of something that you could see that could happen in game? And just give us an example.
Yeah, my org, we're role-playing an insurgency. So we're already starting to look at what little quanta we can see, the trade routes. And you're thinking 600-meter targets. We're looking, what is hard targets that the Navy has, which is something with a lot of military presence. Don't want to be squaring up against a Bengal and its carrier group. Where there's supply lines, if I attack these supply lines, how am I degrading other parts of the Navy? And in the end, am I going to push the Navy out of Stanton or Magnus?
So yeah, that's obviously a really big overview. Like if you're actually trying to push the entire military out. So because that's the other thing I realized. Because if that question that's asked by a commander, that could be a very small or very very broad question, obviously, and that changes the entire scope of the operation.
Right. So there's 4 levels. There's usually strategic, which in Star Citizen will be looking at multiple, or operation will be looking at multiple star systems, how they interact. Strategic would be just looking at Stanton system, and you get into tactical commanders, tactical questions. You're looking at how do I win the battle for Crusader?
Yep.
And those questions scaling up and down because everyone's trying to interact with each other.
So kind of like battles versus wars type of thing. I get you. All right, Badges, do you want to give me your example? If you think of one.
I've got a couple, so I just want to make sure that I don't tread on anyone's toes. But I think, looking at data running as the example, there's an opportunity there for the gameplay to become exactly what we're talking about, to become an integral part of the game that's supported by gameplay loops. At its most base value, if people have been out there hunting mining ships, will watch for their pings.
Yep.
And then track them down through their pings and then get closer and then locate them and attack them, right? That signals intelligence.
Mm.
You might not be intercepting that electronically in the game, but what you're effectively seeing is your HUD is giving you a representation of, we are seeing a ping over here. We're seeing ping activity. That's being visualized in your HUD, and you're going off after it. That is very basic, intelligence gathering, analysis, probably a minor, right? Use. I'm going to go and attack them, hold them up, blow them up, whatever it is they're going to do. And if they make the information, I think we've spoken about this a number of times before, but if they make the information in the game stuff that is actually information, not just here's a stick that has some information on it that you can't use and you need to take it from A to B. As long as it's not cargo, and the one I keep using is the mapping system. If they keep the mapping system roughly the way it is, in that we can't read coordinates, we can't, pass that information any other way. If you just create a waypoint and then you've got to upload it to your organization's mainframes, so then it can be pushed out to everyone else in the organization, that's a piece of information you could effectively intercept. And that would absolutely become part of the intelligence gameplay.
I was just thinking as you were saying that, it would also, like you were talking about pattern of life, like that could actually be on a bigger scale as well. Because I was thinking, like, all of a sudden there's this boom of a particular resource in a place that has not had a boom of resources before, and you can track that back to one guy, and then you track him back forward, and you actually find out that he's found a wormhole. And he's been going through this wormhole, and he's gathering this new resource that no one else has had. That's where my brain went like that. So that there could be some really obscure, like realizing the patterns and going, this is a huge shift. What is going on here? And being able to track that back. So yeah, I know that my brain goes weird places. Is it also?
You're kind of exactly right. Sorry, just before Essa jumps in, exactly what Tony Zurovec talked about at CitizenCon a couple of years ago. As an area becomes more affluent, it attracts more pirates. As you attract more pirates, you attract more security forces because of the work that goes up. That is exactly pattern of life. That's the game doing it to itself. But security organizations who are really switched on and want to get involved in this side could absolutely identify that first. And potentially you could get there almost ahead of the curve with pirates. Because, like you say, discovering that a moon's got a bunch of very lucrative mines or, nodes just been discovered. So now people are flooding there to kind of,
and we did
extort these mines.
We did see that in the Quanta too, like when he goes, now another one's been discovered, and you could actually see how the AI would move around and shift and stuff. So yeah, you're 100% correct.
And that's something that we would be able to interpret in game as well. If you're scanning people as a security organ, everyone's just shifting, copper and iron and all that sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden people are shifting,
unobtainium, handwavium.
Unobtainium. Handwavium, unobtainium. What the fuck is lithium? All that sort of stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
So, SA, you gave a really good episode, one before the show about Boba Fett. So, can you tell us about that one? And bounty hunting?
No, it was just something that reminds me of good use of research and information to achieve a goal for someone like a bounty hunter is the scene in Empire Strikes Back where they lose the Millennium Falcon, it flies by the bridge, and Darth Vader doesn't really get upset. Everyone else gets upset. He's like, all right, great, we're going to move on. And then you see them release the trash. Han Solo releases, right? Floats away with the debris. Wow, we got away. And then right after that, you see Boba Fett's ship light up, and boom, right after him. And that scene it's cool. We all love it. He's the hunter. He's tracking them down. But the key is he is tracking them down. He knows his prey. He knows, what what the pattern of both the Star Destroyer will be, releasing the trash, and a method that Han Solo may have previously used by hitting, off screen, learning more about his prey, going to somewhere in Tatooine we never saw to talk about dealing with him. And to me, that scene implied all that. It implied that he's a hunter, and hunting isn't just killing someone. Hunting is tracking them and learning about, like what type of ship does he have? What are his patterns? Where could I expect him to go after this? That's why he's at best, like he tracks into Bespin, but he's familiar with all these people. He's clearly done the research.
Yeah. And he's got networks.
Yes. And he's utilizing those networks, and those networks probably have no clue why he's doing that. It's all about building those relationships, paying the money to the right people. And as a gameplay for Star Citizen, you may not be that bounty hunter. You may enjoy it, but you may not be the most effective bounty hunter, but you may be a great signal interceptor. You may be that broker that knows where you and your small team have been tracking a mining org, let's say, and your hacker has noticed, who hacks into their system, notices that, wow, they usually go from this system to this system in this schedule, but their schedule changed. I wonder why they did that. Let's take our observation, our signal intercept, and observation terrapin, send it into that, through that jump point, and just monitor for their general comms traffic. You may have hacked what signals they use, what frequency. You hack that. You find out that they're going to this asteroid belt. You slowly track them, do a scan of that area, try not to get caught. You find out they found a new deposit that's worth trillions of UEC in the long run that they're mining that no one else knows about. And then you can take that back, sell that information to a competitor, jam them, do a variety of things with that information.
I'm having this thing in my head that I can't get out of it. Remember we were talking about the terrapin on the asteroid in the commercial as it rotates through? And I'm now thinking about the Millennium Falcon rotating on the back of that Star Destroyer. Coincidence? I think not, but yeah. So we'll see. So yeah, there is going to be a lot of instances where this is used in game. I think the other one that we haven't even touched on, and I after the talks today, we also had a couple other people in the room when we were talking. We haven't even touched counterintelligence. So that's like how to stop them doing this stuff to you. And that'll be a whole nother episode that I'll do in a couple of weeks. We're going to bring some people in that specialize in that as well. So yeah, is there anything else you guys would like to add? I think I'll kind of open the floor a bit now to all of you. And is there anything that you would like to add? Like, is there like simple things like, do you want to see more ships? And what type of ships would you like to see that benefit this? So like, do you see something like I know you were saying, Commander, that you work in a big crew of 30 people. Do you see some kind of really big mothership for analyzing stuff, or do you think it's going to be more boots on the ground type analysis where you're working out the back of MSR? I'll just throw that question to you.
The boots on the ground. When you propose a ship where all your information's going to, it's going to get attacked and destroyed on site every time. And the reality is, where I have Discord, I can make a locked Discord channel.
Yep.
Right. No one's going to use that ship. They're going to go to Discord. They're going to go on shared Google Docs with one person.
So would you say it's more likely that there's an analyst that does not roll off my Australian tongue, that's maybe in like one room on a Javelin or an Idris? Like that, is that far more likely? Or do you think it's just not going to be in game at all?
There could be the room. I always thought like the Globe room and the Carrack and the Polaris, where there's going to be a guy who's seeing ships pop in and out, and he's going to tell what they are, and he's going to relay that to the ship commander, and the commander is going to do what he needs to do with that information immediately. But there's not going to be any ship that handles long-term collection and information storage.
Yep. So yeah, so that kind of does answer the question why we haven't possibly seen bigger bounty hunting ships and bigger data runners and stuff, because there's just not really a need. Is that how you see it? Yeah.
Yeah, there wouldn't be.
Yeah. Badges, anything from you before we wrap up?
No, not really. I think there are the opportunities for those things to exist if CIG want to pivot and go that way. And the example that I'll use is CitizenCon, when they released or revealed prisons. They said, well, what we would like is for you to not, not be able to tell people which prison that you're on. But we can't do that in game because, of course, people are just going to use Discord, and that's the end of that. And I caught the guy, I forget his name, I do apologize, walking down one of the passageways, and I just said, look, there's another way you could handle it.
I'm picturing you with a really big net, by the way. Just like...
Yes, yeah, literally, yeah. As he's hanging upside down from the noose trap that I've just set for him, going, I have an idea.
What's the bait you use for developers? Is it just like a burrito? I don't know, like...
yeah, that's it, yeah. Time off, I would guess.
Yeah.
But,
true.
You know, and I just said, look, once we've got multiple prisons in, the way you do it is you don't tell which people which prison they're in.
Yeah.
Because you can only communicate over voice comms that which you know.
Yeah.
So if we don't have a coordinate system for planets, your marker is irrelevant without bit. So it's in-game information that you can pass. If CIG choose to go that way, you've got all the scope in the world for, you know, you could have a message within your org. Our new mining base for the, you know, the nodes that's trillions of UEC that X was talking about, that waypoint's now been upgraded to the org mainframes. But only people of this level or higher can see where it is, and that's how you kind of compartmentalize information. That's something for hackers to go after, and then data runners have something genuine to sell that has real value in the game. Entire intelligence hacking, data running gameplay loop. You're welcome, CIG.
Yep. What about USA? Anything you would like to add before we wrap up?
I had 3 quick things. The first one is...
I'll give you 2. No, just kidding.
We are talking in really gross, overly simplified terms this entire episode. So there's a lot of stuff we didn't touch. Some of it is because of operational security and just job, you know, and what we do, that we're not going to go into those details. But this is a huge basket of worms. Like there is... When we were talking earlier, there's so much that you can go into detail and sub-detail of specialties, even within the current game mechanics. So expect this to evolve. Second thing is the really cool part about the 3 things we talked about, collection, analysis, and use, is that collection we know is going to be in the game because we know the systems they're developing. They're developing trade systems where ships will move certain points. They're developing communication systems, spectral analysis, environmental hazards, all the things that are going to create the feel of the verse.
Yep.
That information is already going to be developed. The ability to collect it is a rather minor development piece. It's about how we can monitor what the game will be doing. The analysis portion and the use portion are mainly out of game.
Yep.
And that's something that CIG doesn't have to put resources to develop. You know, the players will develop the use. They will put it all to good use.
Yep.
You want to say something next before I get to my last
I
one?
was just going to say, though, like, this really does, like, that collection thing, it does fall a lot under the Explorer tab. It really, really does. Like, it's a form of exploration. It is, like, the data gathering. And things like the Herald, that does fall under it as well, but they're more the storage and selling of it, like as a like kind of, as Badger said, as actual tangible information or as a product that you can move and sell. I think ships like the Terrapin and the Carrack and stuff like that, you can see why the Carrack was a military explorer. You can see it. Like it was sitting there with these huge ass scanners gathering all this information. And, you know, if you put different scanners on it, it's going to find different things. You know, there'll be scanners for finding ships, there'll be scanners for finding phenomenon like wormholes and stuff like that. So you can actually tailor yours to different areas of exploration. And I do think, well, I don't know, you guys correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I think that collecting part probably more than anything else goes exploration. But you correct me if
you kind of saw my last one, which was I mean, I do agree with
that's
you.
my job, I'll be here all week. No,
yeah. I do agree with you. It is a different, I wouldn't call it exploration, but I would call exploration part of collection in a way. There's a larger ability to collect information in this game that there are no mechanics. The underpinnings are there, but the actual mechanics to do the collection aren't there for any of these ships. And my last point was going to be ships right now that like I bought the Terrapin when it came out because I love the look of it, but I got rid of it because it had no use. I thought it was the coolest looking ship. It had no use to it. I know. I'm a traitor to my lovely Terrapin. But, you know, when these mechanics come into play, these ships right now that have very little use, the prime examples you gave, the Terrapin and the Herald, are actually going to have a large amount of use.
Yep.
And then ships you don't expect. So for, the militaries don't use only military, planes to collect things. We know they're contractors. We know there are other people doing stuff. You might see your 400i might be the most valuable collection tool in a certain system because no one's expecting you to be using a 400i for that. So the gameplay that opens up for all the ships is just more than we can even fathom at this point.
And we bring that up a lot, like using things for not their intended use. Like that is a real thing. Like I remember us talking about, and this is just in a discussion a month or so ago, like filling a whole sea up with like auroras and then just deploying all the auroras out from the crates and using it like a swarm ship and stuff like that. There are weird things like that come up in discussions. Things like we've said before about using the Crucible to bring tanks down to a planet because they just wouldn't expect it, stuff like that. So
I have a friend that loves the mechanics of like social interaction, role playing, and I don't like doing role playing. But one thing they were very good at is getting information from other orgs, because they would go into bars and go into gameplay scenarios where they could do that and just start up conversations. So I think these systems that we've discussed, they affect the entire game and all different style of gameplay.
Yeah. And there's a really interesting thing for modularity here, because, and you can Google this, I'm not making this up, but in the real world, the Russians used a lot, and I think they still use, a lot of trawlers that are kitted out with nothing but signal intercept gear. And they were, back in the day, easy to spot because they were covered in aerials and everything else. And of course now things have gotten better, so they're much harder to spot. But they were called AGIs by the Americans, and it kind of course, with NATO, it's stuck. But, using something that looks like it's quite innocently doing whatever it's doing at a location, but it's not. It's signals intercept and monitoring movements and all that sort of stuff. So.
Yeah. So, in the comments below, I'd like to hear from you guys, like, where you'd like us to go with this, like, into more depth. As I've said, we're going to do an episode on counterintelligence in the coming weeks. Is there anything you guys would like to hear in the comments below? So, Commander, anything you would like to hear from people, like feedback?
Yeah, I would like to know, of course, if you want to hear more about analysis. Big part about being an analyst is thinking like that. So my goal is starting to having people in the community thinking about the information that's out there, the information that they're putting out there. You know, there's an org today who lost 3 600i executive editions because they were sloppy with their information. And as the game develops, there's going to be targets that aren't as replaceable.
There's no love lost there, mate. There's no love lost there. Only 600 eyes. Who cares?
Who would be so dastardly to take out 3 600i executives?
I will do it every day until Origin Jumpworks is kicked out of the game.
That's dark.
All right. What about you, Badges? Anything you'd like to hear back from people in the comments?
Just the normal. Let us know where you think this fits in, and more to the point, let us know which intelligence parts of that you would find really interesting, and hopefully someone with some influence will see it, and maybe we'll get what we're after.
And yourself, Essay?
Yeah, I'd like to know, has this changed your mind on information collection, intelligence, and those potential gameplay loops? And as a bigger note, because now I'm curious, this professional series has gone on for long enough, I'd like to know, has it changed your mind on professions and potentially incorporating them into your orgs, if not as to do them, but just information?
Yeah. And maybe the other, like, while we're talking about broad overview, is there any other professions you'd like to see specifically? So, yeah, get back to me on that. With that, I've been joined by this little dude. Oh, this is Jaxie. He's my cat. He's a grumpy bum. Anyway, with that, he's been Commander, he's been Badges, and he's been Essay, and he's been Jackson. He's about to run away. There he is. And we'll see you guys in the next one.
Have a good one.
You can say goodbye, Badges and Commander.
Ciao, guys.